The creative and the media are the biggest levers. But I think if you don't reach people in the first place, you're kind of dead in the water, right? I think it's like I ran track and field. It's the first hurdle that you need to jump over, right? If you don't reach them, there's no conversation to be had. And then when you reach them, they need to actually remember you exist and to think of you in a particular context.
Hello, and welcome to The Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Hingle. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Angela Voss, our CEO, Rob DeMars, our Chief Product Architect, and we're joined by a very special guest, Ty Heath. Ty is currently the Director of Market Engagement at the B2B Institute, a think tank funded by LinkedIn, studying the future of B2B marketing and decision-making. Ty helps educate the marketing industry in partnership with marketing effectiveness leaders to help marketers be more productive and successful. She has over 18 years of marketing experience, including time at Google and IBM. She's led her own B2B agency consulting practice, Spectacled Marketer. She's a board member at the American Advertising Federation, on the advisory council of the Digital Marketing Institute, and has delivered marketing education to what has to be over 1 million marketers by now, including the three of us. So we're very excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Ty.
Welcome. How many hours do you have in your day? You must have more than I do, than we do.
Who is that they're talking about? What are you doing?
Very, very excited to have you here. We're back with Ty and our thoughts on some recent marketing news, always trying to root our opinions in data research and what drives business results. And we asked Ty to join us to help break down some recent research from the B2B Institute in partnership with System 1, which resulted in a new formula for B2B creative success. And the inspiration to ask Ty to come on the show came from an Adweek article that we passed around internally titled, "We Need a New Formula for Creativity in B2B Advertising." And as a group, we're very passionate about creativity in B2B and big fans of the B2B Institute's work, so it's no surprise that this grabbed our attention. And to tee us up, I wanted to quote directly from the beginning of the article because I think it does a pretty brilliant job describing the current challenge of B2B creative. It tends to follow a set formula: product features plus disembodied voiceover plus generic visuals. You know what we're talking about. Stock images of professionals in gray suits sitting around a conference table shaking hands. Text that describes your product in excruciating quantitative detail. Generic attributes that could apply to any brand, like innovative and reliable. And don't forget the voice actor with the soothing baritone.
Soothing baritone voice.
Just like that. Everybody's worst nightmare, the big branding reveal. And I'm sure we all had no problem visualizing this type of ad and just did a collective shudder. But it's not uncommon in B2B, and according to the B2B Institute and System 1 study of 2,500 B2B ads from 2020 to 2022, it's also ineffective. And Ty's here today to help us dig into those details. But to get us started, Ty, could you tell us a little bit about why you conducted this research?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a collective shudder. I think we can all picture that. And that's part of the reason why we are doing this work, is because we think there's a lot more that people can do to connect to people in a real way. And, we also need to think about how we measure how that's going so we can point the category in the right direction as we move. And so there's a lot of metrics we use today that we've learned to track over the years. And, as we think about how we measure creativity and the performance of our marketing, sometimes we don't even know why or bother to question why we measure things the way we do. They're old habits sometimes, and sometimes it's what leadership wants to see. And that's an ongoing challenge because the most sophisticated B2B marketers can really struggle to prove the value to stakeholders in sales and finance, especially when you take big creative leaps. The things that really make your brand memorable. There's still some resistance, I think, here and there to taking on what people see as that being risky. Right? So with all of those insights, we started this year-long quest, this journey to build a CMO scorecard, which is a measurement framework to help our customers, but we want to definitely expand and help people just have access to the formula. That's meant to prove and improve the business impact of brand investments and provide people a competitive benchmark in the set to understand how they're doing.
Well, speaking of measuring the business impact, what is the issue or the challenge with measuring B2B creative?
Well, actually, let's take a step back because, there's a litmus test for good measurement. And I think that litmus test is there empirical research? And ideally, that research would come from some unbiased third party. Maybe it's an academic institution. And we want to get to this idea of, can we prove that if X marketing metric goes up, Y financial metric goes up, right? Most of the time, it's just never that clear cut to get to that. If we can actually say that this marketing metric drives this other marketing metric, which produces this financial output, we'd be in a good place. But there's not a lot of credible research, in our opinion, that produces a metric that leads to that financial output. And that's what we want to see. So, here's what we're thinking. We want marketing metrics that tie us closer to finance. We want marketing metrics that allow us to have more financial conversations with our stakeholders in finance and beyond. And we believe that great creative and great media, so foreshadowing there, deliver great outcomes. And so the 6 creative and media factors that we measure in the CMO scorecard are actually advertising inputs, not business outcomes. And they're aligned to the value that LinkedIn provides for marketers, hirers, and sellers. And I think the good news is those are things that all businesses need to do well. So good marketing, hiring great talent, and selling the value of the products and services you deliver. So we want to report on the benefits that those things deliver that are fueled really by brand investments. So, we took a look at campaign data to determine a brand's impact on marketing. So that's which ads increase the chances that buyers become leads. Selling, so which ads increase the chances that buyers actually respond to sales outreach. So for example, a connection request on LinkedIn or an in-mail message. And then hiring, which ads actually increase the chances that candidates become employees. And so clients really love to see how their hiring, marketing, and selling metrics compare with competition and really benefit from being able to show the direct connection between brand investment and how it does more than just simply raise awareness. But just to reiterate, brands are able to generate quality leads for marketers, but beyond that, connections for sellers and candidates for recruiters. So it's kind of an expansion of what brand can actually deliver for a company. And that offers the marketer a stronger position within the C-suite and also a broader view of the value that marketing and advertising contributes to the business.
Thanks, Ty. We appreciate too just all the different metrics that the B2B Institute offers and just equipping marketers with more information to prove their value to the C-suite. And one thing that the article talked about was likability and how important that is to B2B creative success. Speaking of, how do we predict how well something's going to perform and impact the business? How well did this B2B creative, how well did it perform in terms of likability?
I think you can guess the answer to that. That's, again, why we're doing this work. So it's not well. We already imagined the typical B2B ad with the stock business photography, the generic attributes, the voice actor. That's the formula. You wait to the last minute to reveal your branding. So all of those things are the formula for the typical B2B creative. And what we can say is that it's not working. So this is where our work with our partner System 1, measuring those ads over 2020 to 2022 really helped illuminate this. So just to give you some background on what System 1 actually does, they test for ad likability and brand growth potential. And they have a 1 to 5 star scale to do this. So if you have a 1 star, it means that your ad isn't very likable and it's probably not memorable either. And then on the other end of the spectrum, 5 stars means that the ad is likable and memorable. So there's ample academic evidence showing that ads that score higher on likability pretest are more likely to capture attention and therefore build the brand memories that lead to brand growth. So I'll say that marketers are actually in the memory business. We need to be remembered. The brand that's remembered is that's bought, right? And so, we have this other principle called the 95-5 rule, which says that 95% of your category buyers are out market or not in the market for your products or services at any given time. What that means is that the primary job of your B2B creative isn't to generate an immediate sale, but to build memories of the brand that make those future purchases more likely. So with all that in mind, what we are seeing right now really doesn't bode very well for B2B creative. 67% of B2B creative scores 1 star.
Well, and these are forced exposures too in terms of the study. I mean, that really is a compelling thing when you think about memorability. Going, well, we're actually forcing people to watch these, and they're still not memorable. Imagine what's happening when they're actually out in broadcast competing with everything else out there.
Exactly. So and you nailed it. So, these ads are really too forgettable to have a impact on brand growth. And what System 1 recommends is 3 stars as a minimum for an effective ad, but fewer than 1 in 10 of the B2B ads are really passing that standard.
I love that they have those 2 measures because it really gives insight to the marketer to both of these matter, and actually probably one of them matters more, right? But we live in such a short-term world, and marketing teams are under a lot of pressure to drive that short-term sale, which is important too. Right. So I love the balance of the 2, but B2B creative really has lagged behind B2C, right? In likability. I'm curious from your perspective, why do you think B2B is falling short? Why are we on this catch-up game of trying to catch up with B2C?
Yeah, I think we have a lot to learn from B2C. I think a lot of it comes back to risk, right? And, I think we've also become disconnected from the fact that we're still selling to human beings who are driven by emotion, who make decisions based on memory. We satisfy. So forgetting there is real human behavior. I think one of the other distinctions, if you're selling a cloud analytics platform, for example, that's a huge investment. Your job could be on the line, taking a big swing.
Yeah, it's even more emotional, right? Than potentially like buying shoes. Yeah.
That could be your job. And I think so. The challenge is because you're not very likely to be remembered, and then you're forgetting the human side and the connection that needs to be built in order to drive the purchase in the future. For any marketer that's having a challenge sort of painting the picture of this, I definitely recommend taking a look at the 95-5 rule. We need to balance brand and demand. We do need to capture, that 5% of customers that's latent demand that's been generated. But when you think about the fact that 95% of your buyers are in the future, representing future cash flow, that's not a story of lead generation. That's a matter of memory generation. Right. And if you want to be remembered, there are things, and I know we'll talk more about it, the emotion, the creative, the characters. These are the things that people anchor on, and when they put themselves into the buying situation. So our marketing doesn't put the buyer in. We don't believe in the standard funnel. We believe that you're either out market or in market. When buyers put themselves in market, your brand is going to be the brand that they're more likely to remember at that point.
And everyone wants to go in and sell, right, a brand to upper management that everyone's heard of, right? No one wants to walk into the board meeting and say, hey, we're making a $1 million decision. We probably won't make another one for another 12 years. And we're going with someone you've never heard of.
She's right on. That's the risk version that marketers face that makes it challenging for us to see the type of creativity that we would like to see in B2B. That being said, I think wherever there's a challenge, there's an opportunity for those B2B marketers who decide to jump in, to take advantage of the opportunity. There's a huge opportunity.
Ty, one thing you just mentioned, the importance of emotion and character in B2B, and that sounds an awful lot like a company that this Adweek article talks about and the B2B Institute talks about a lot, which is Disney. Can you tell me a little bit more about what could a B2B marketer learn from a company like Disney?
Yeah, Disney shows up a lot in B2B Institute content. We're fans.
It's the happiest marketing on earth.
Yes, it is. I mean, we've all seen the movies and we can all identify with it, certainly. So imagine you're the CEO of Disney, and every day there's all these creative ideas, and they're the best creatives in the industry pitching you these ideas, new movies, new rides, new shows, new books, new games. Everything sounds like a hit, but here's the thing, you can't fund every single idea, right? You want to invest only in the very best creative. So how do you choose? So what Disney's done is that they've looked at past performance to see what sells. And if you've ever seen a list of like top 10 grossing Disney movies of all time, you can probably guess. Avengers Endgame is number one. Star Wars is up there as well. So Lion King. So it's a lot of these like big franchises, right, that sell. And you don't need Chat GPT to see the pattern. When it comes to that, 90% of those movies are either sequels or remakes. 90% of them include superpowered protagonists. 50% of those are from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if you're the CEO of Disney, you can look at that formula and now you can bet on these familiar franchises, which really explains why in 2023, we've got Ant-Man 3, Guardians of the Galaxy, Indiana Jones, Little Mermaid, Peter. So for the last 7 years, Disney has dominated the box office by applying that consistent creative formula, right? There's so many things about betting big on these big franchises. Even if you look at the assets that Disney has cultivated, if I were to line up the characters side by side, you can see a connection in the design and the look of it. Have these distinctive assets. They've got these characters that we all want to know and follow and see them win, and by the way, characters are a huge underinvested space for memory building. I don't know about you all, but less than 1% of B2B ads feature characters. And I think when we think about characters, the reason why it works is it's a picture speaks 1,000 words. We connect to what we remember. It's the stories that we connect to. Right?
It's classic storytelling. I mean, Star Wars gets a lot of credit for borrowing from the classic hero's journey, right? So it's just like timeless.
TV is the most powerful marketing channel. It's first in effectiveness, leads for trust, and is number one in driving emotion. But it's also expensive, difficult to scale, and hard to measure. So we flipped the traditional agency model on its head and created all-inclusive TV. You get one bill for media. We cover everything else you need to succeed. So say goodbye to hourly agency fees and say hello to making TV work harder than ever. Visit marketingarchitects.com to learn more. Well, speaking of just success and successive advertising in general, the article, it shares some advertisements from brands like Adobe, Simply Business, and Intuit, and we'll be sure to share those ads in the episode description. But Ty, why did you feature those ads as examples of B2B creative success?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are 3 best-in-class B2B creatives. And I feel like I should go back and also touch on the other part of the measurement, which is brand fluency. So System 1 measures the likability and then also the brand fluency. And when it comes to brand fluency, that's brand recognition. And what we found is that 24% of buyers cannot correctly identify the brand in the ad. So this is going back to what you were saying about even with the forced exposure, right? And so when you think about being in the real world where people are walking around, strolling by, taking in content, you have a real disconnect here. So these 3 ads that you just called out, the best in class creatives, from a likability and fluency standpoint. So Adobe was 5.3 stars and 78 on fluency. Simply Business was 3.2 and then 87 on brand fluency. And Intuit was 3.1 and 77. And just remember, System 1 recommended that benchmark of 3 stars to cross that. So across those 3 ads, here's what they did well. And I'm curious to hear what maybe resonated for you all in the ads as well. The first thing is that creative needs to capture attention. As I said, the brand that's remembered is the brand that's bought. And that's why when you use sort of product description things, that really rarely works as a message. So when you think about things like faster processing speed, most innovative, all those things, they rarely work as a memorable message. And so the job of creative is to entertain and not so much to educate. That's why we need, catchy music, like the soundtrack in the Adobe ad. They had relatable characters like the small business owners. There's a giant IRS chicken, in the Intuit ad. So to capture attention, we need to actually stand out and not blend in. And we do want that excessive branding is the next thing. So again, we don't want to wait until the last 2 seconds to reveal the brand. I think we said, marketers act like magicians and like there's a big reveal.
Right.
Who this is. No, we don't want to do that. We don't want to. We want to actually brand early, consistently.
You paid for 30 seconds, so use 30, not 5.
I think sometimes marketers get confused with the idea of, well, we need to be really emotional, right? We're being told we need to drive that emotion and that will drive memorability. And I think sometimes that leads to, low branding and maybe just music, but we're sort of working against ourselves in some capacity.
That's why I really appreciated your introduction of the scorecard as well, because I think there's so much subjectivity in what people think is creative. And if you just tell people, go do better creative, they could think, well, that's 25 seconds of rock and roll and 5 seconds of logo, where I think you guys put together a really nice, clear way for all shareholders to align on what great creative means.
Yeah, and let's be clear, there's not like a magical formula that says like, insert these 5. I know, I wish, right? There's not like a magic formula. It's like, do these things and you will, you have to be conscious. You have to be aware of how it lands. You have to be aware of the context that the ad is being delivered in. That's why we get paid, right? To know these things. Emotional spikes work. Characters work. Music works. All of these things work, but you have to, it's our job to be thoughtful about how we put those things together.
I thought that Adobe did a really nice job of that, where their ad was emotional, it told a story, but also one of the first few frames you start to see the Adobe logo and they show you their platform. And so they're branding throughout while maintaining that emotion.
That is a good example. And that's why we can learn from these best in class creatives. Hopefully they can be inspiring to people to think about it and, produce creative that lands. I do want to point out one more thing that I think is pretty revolutionary that B2B creative can invest in, and that's this concept of category linkage. So not only do you want your brand to be remembered, but you want your brand to be remembered and associated with particular buying situations. And so those are the things you can highlight in your creative, because it's like you can use our product, but you want the person to actually imagine when they're using the product and how it's going to solve their problem. And there's a lot of different contexts of awareness to think about. And so as a B2B marketer, thinking about the range of different buying situations that could exist and thinking where you are most credible, what's the most common to make it commercially viable, and then where it makes sense for you to compete is another way to think about how you link your brands to those situations. And that's where QuickBooks and the Simply Business message and the Adobe ads also are linking to these relevant situations.
Right. Ty, you mentioned that there's not going to be one, set of instructions that marketers can follow to always succeed, but the B2B Institute does a good job of giving us guidelines. And one of those things that you've recently created is the ABLE formula, which stands for attention times brandage times linkage equals equity. And that's what this article all comes to is, hey, here's a way that we could try to predict B2B creative success. Could you walk us through that formula?
I'm super excited about it, and I hope you appreciate the fact that we named it and gave it an acronym to make it hopefully memorable. Yeah. So here's the thing. Great creative generates 10 to 20 times more sales than mediocre creative. So we wanted to give a formula to give people some sense of how to invest in creative. I gave you some examples of things you can do. We have a great piece of research called Cashing In on Creativity to check out. This is part of our CMO scorecard formula. So attention is to identify creative that can be noticed, right? Most ads are failing to grab attention. So we need ads that spark attention with engaging, fun, and creative elements. So this is where some of the things I talked about before, music, unique visuals, characters, emotions, and like themes. So think storyline. These are the things that grab attention. And that brings us to branding. So branding is, again, you want your buyers to attribute the creative to the correct brand. So if the person watching your ad has no idea what the brand is, it doesn't matter how entertaining it is, doesn't matter how catchy the music is. That's why we want to brand clearly from the outset and do it across multiple frames, memorable taglines. Think about distinctive assets like the color and the logo. You want to do that consistently. And then the last piece of the ABLE formula is linkage. And that's what I was just talking about, the buying situation conversation. So, for your ad to have an impact, your customers need to see the value in the brand. So this is, having them be able to picture the how and the why and the specific situations in which your solution is going to deliver value. And it's moving away from, and what you were making fun of as we opened up the conversation, which is anchoring on, the professionals in the room talking about features and benefits that no one will remember. These are the things we want to avoid as we're thinking about it. So just remembering that it shouldn't be boring. It doesn't have to be. And if we do it well, it can be fun, creative, and engaging.
Love the simplicity of the framework, and clearly there's an opportunity, right? I think we all agree for the B2B market to improve business results through better creative effectiveness. I'm curious to that point. B2B is so broad, right? In some cases, you've got a very clear and somewhat singular offering and message that's easier to kind of wrap a story around. But how do you envision brands with more inherently technical or complex products adapting to this framework, particularly in industries where product differentiation is highly nuanced and the features might be kind of critical to the buying decision? I think we've all heard the saying, right? If we're saying everything, then we're saying nothing, which can be a challenge with a more complex offering. So I'm curious what advice you'd give to both marketers and agencies facing that challenge.
Yeah, I think we have to do both. We have to balance brand and demand, right? So going back to the 95-5 rule, we have to remember we're in also the memory generation business. What's going to be remembered? So this is where you want to think about what is the brand essence you can bring? What's a brand story you can tell? When you think about the insurance category, for example, you could spend a lot of time talking about all the technical features of the insurance that's going to be delivered, and here's how it's going to save all of these things. Or you could do what Geico does. And when I say Geico, you think about the gecko. Who would think that a character like that could be the marketing of an insurance company? And actually, the insurance category is a great example because there's so many examples of when you think about this really serious category, but the way that they have invested in memory building devices, think Limu Emu.
Right, Flow, and you've got the Unbecoming Your Parents, like the insurance category in general has just done a really great job of all of this.
They've done an excellent job of it. But I imagine when it comes down to capturing the latent demand on the other side of that's when they're getting into the nitty gritty. That's when they're talking about the benefits and helping people make those decisions. But to grow, you have to expand, like going back to the formula we're talking about, growth, the biggest drivers of growth in the CMO formula, creative times media, which is reach, equals your outcomes, the hiring, marketing, and sales. Right. And so if you turn the dial up on those levers, it gives you more people to talk to and you're more remembered. And that gives you more latent demand to capture when people put themselves into the buying situation.
Absolutely. Ty, is there a piece of this formula that you at the LinkedIn Institute have found more important than others, or are they all sort of equal and should be thought of that way?
Was some hardcore debating going on over the acronym?
I'm just envisioning like you and Peter and John like punching it out on the formula.
I'll show you, Abel.
We do spend quite a bit of time talking about these things. Those are the two, the creative and the media are the biggest levers. But I think if you don't reach people in the first place, you're kind of dead in the water, right? I think it's like I ran track and field. It's the first hurdle that you need to jump over, right? If you don't reach them, there's no conversation to be had. And then when you reach them, they need to actually remember you exist and to think of you in a particular context. But the thing to know, and the reason why we hopefully made this fun acronym for people to remember, is that we need to deliver on both. Our creative needs to be stronger. We need to really think about this message fragmentation as well, in terms of all the thousands of messages that brands deliver. It can be really confusing for customers to like remember or think about like in what situation. We want to be more clear with that. And then we want to reach as many customers in the category as possible. Think about it this way. If you are a B2C marketer and you're selling toothpaste, you can target everyone because everyone has teeth, but if you are in B2B, you want to have what we call relevant reach. You want to reach as many people as possible that could potentially buy your solution. Going back to the cloud analytics platform, maybe not everyone's in the market for that, but you don't know who's in the buying committee. You don't know all the decision makers. So you want to reach as many people as possible with that message so that you can be connected with the creative that helps them remember who you are. That's my take.
Wonderful. I think that might be a great place for us to wrap up today. I wanted to share a little bit of how this article ends, which was with some promise. Top of funnel brand investments, they are growing in B2B, and awards like the Creative B2B Lions have been established to encourage the growth of effective B2B marketing, and organizations like the B2B Institute and thought leaders like Ty are helping us all get a little bit better each day. And marketers, don't forget, if you want a seat at the table, your creative must be able.
Yes, love it.
We love a rhyme. That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you find our show valuable, please leave us a rating and review. And if you want to know what the research says about some recent news, you can contact us at marketingarchitects.com/podcast. Now go forth and build great marketing.